right, well, welcome back to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. You are listening to the Dr. Luis Sandoval Show. Today we are talking about what does it mean to be a man, more from a perspective of what does it really mean to raise a man. You know, a lot of times for ourselves as guys, we don't always, we have this idea in society. What does it mean to be a man? Well, you better wear a leather jacket and ride a motorcycle, right? And so that's very simple. That's what it means to be a man. Or, you know, we have different perspectives on you better have a nice aftershave smell to you. Or, you know, you better wear the right shoes and make sure that they're polished. There's lots of manly things, you know, wear a watch and make sure that it's wound up and on time. You know, there's so many things that we say defines a man from a material perspective, but really we got to look at it from what's the heart of a man? Where does the heart of a man come from? You know, I was looking here at the book of Job. Let's look up Job chapter 14, The frailty of man is actually what it's called. The first verse is Job chapter 14, verse 1. Man that is born of a woman is of few days and full of trouble. He comes forth like a flower and withers. He flees like a shadow and continues not. You know, it doesn't really make it seem like man is that much. And I think in many ways, we have to start to take that perspective of, you know, if I'm going to talk to my son about what does it mean to be a man? What is a man? I got to say, you know, we're not much. But I need to finish that. I need to have an honest conversation. And I think that this is what the most important part is. In order to raise a man, a good man, if I want to raise a good Catholic man, I have to give him the truth. And I got to tell him, we are not much, but I got to finish the sentence, on our own. We are not much on our own, but we are everything if we turn our hearts, our minds, our eyes to God, to Jesus Christ. If we look at him as our model of perfection, then we will be raised up. Then we will reach excellence. Then we will reach perfection along with him. I think that that's the important thing that I need to remember every time I have a conversation with my son, especially as he gets older, especially as he gets into those teenage years. Here's another great verse from that same chapter. Again, this is Job chapter 14, verse 10. But man dies and is laid low. Man breathes his last, and where is he? I like that last part because a lot of times I know that as men, as we're going through the world, a lot of people really want to leave what they call a legacy. And they say, oh, what's my legacy going to be? I see this all the time in the corporate world, you know, in the business world, people want to leave their mark like it's going to be important. You know, it doesn't make sense to me. Ultimately, we're going to be forgotten about 2 generations. You know, 2 generations ago, do you remember every man who did everything for their company? Is anybody, you know, that important and that great? Yeah, there's a few figures in history that we follow throughout, but how much of what we follow and what we read about them is actually true? You know, a lot of times it just becomes legend. It just becomes lore. It becomes that, you know, that idea that, oh, this man was so great because of this or that. But there's very few people, if you think about how many men there have been in the history of the world to how many men we actually study in history, boy, it sure doesn't make a whole lot of difference, right? Because one of the challenges is we are trying to look for fame. We are trying to look for legacy here on this planet, which is not lasting. What I really got to ask myself, and this verse is pretty bold, is, and where is he? Let's read that again because this is important. But man dies and is laid low, laid in the ground, laid low. You can think of it in many, many ways. You can also think of it as laid low in humility because death is a great equalizer. We're all going to die. And then what? Because it says man breathes his last, and where is he? Once we die, we have that last breath. Where are we? That's really where the legacy is going to lie. Not so much as to, you know, notice that this does not ask, hey son, where is your name going to be on all the buildings on this planet? Where your you know, are you going to be in the history books? Are you going to be remembered here for being the greatest athlete ever? Is that really what your legacy is? Because once you breathe your last breath, where are you going to be? That's really what matters. That's really what it means for you to be a man, is to understand a few things. And I think that this is what we really need to understand as Catholics. And this is what I would want to convey to my son, and what I need to convey to myself on a daily basis is, you know, part of being a man is not so much, some people have said, well, being a man means that you have a family and you have kids, and you're not really a man unless you have children. Well, what's that to say about celibate priests who are never going to get married and never have children? Are they not men? Or being a man, you know, means that you play sports and that you have your varsity leather jacket and that, you know, you were popular or things along those lines. Well, what about guys who just didn't want to play sports or never had the opportunity to, does that stop them from being a man? And I think that that's not necessarily the case. I still remember in the hospital, you go to the hospital, let's say your wife's pregnant and you're going to get that ultrasound and they're going to let you know what the sex of the baby is. Is it a boy? Is it a girl? Is it a boy? Is it a girl? Let's look on the screen. Let's see what genitals have formed. Let's see what's going on there. And of course, the tech tells you, oh, sorry, can't tell you. You got to wait for the doctor to tell you because I'm not allowed to read this. Well, okay, sure. But if you're savvy enough, I was there. I was lucky enough to be there with my wife while they were doing the ultrasounds. And I could already tell, when it was a boy or a girl or whatnot. I was looking at the screen. And my wife was funny because she says, I can't see anything on there. It just looks like snow. And I said, yep, that's pretty much what the ultrasounds look like. They look like snow. But after a while, you do enough of them, you know what you need to look for. Everything's kind of fuzzy at first, and then you start making little outlines. You start realizing, oh, this is a leg. No, this is what's popping up in and out of there. Usually it's easy to tell what the head is because you get this big round white circle, and it just kind of gets bigger and smaller depending on how they're moving the ultrasound machine on there. But the reality is that's kind of how I felt. That's kind of how I felt when we were looking at that, and all of a sudden there's a boy. And all of a sudden, it was a great analogy for me because I thought, man, this feels like snow. I was used to having girls, and now I have a boy, and I wasn't ready for that because I thought, well, honey, you and I, we make girls. That's what we make. And we'll have a whole different show on what it feels like to be raising girls in today's day and age, and what I really want to tell them. But as far as raising a boy, it felt like snow to me. I wasn't used to it. I was used to having girls. I was used to raising girls. I thought, gosh, maybe that's what our biology is good for. Maybe you and I are compatible for girls. Maybe that's what your body likes to accept. But all of a sudden there's a boy. And I had to ask myself, it felt like snow in my mind. And I thought, I got to slowly learn to make the outlines. And my wife said, but you're a guy. How could you not know? And I said, no, it's different. There's one thing to be raising myself, so to speak, or to be growing in my own skin. But now I'm responsible for another boy. And I think one of the things that I want him to understand, of course, when he's old enough, is that man dies and is laid low. Man breathes his last. And where is he? We think about this every time on Ash Wednesday. Remember, you are dust, and to dust you shall return. And that's really what this is telling us. You're dust, and to dust you shall return. But it doesn't finish the sentence. It doesn't finish it because to dust you shall return. So what? It should really say, and then what? And where are you at that point? You're going to turn into dust. What are you doing today that's going to get you to where you need to be? And I would dare say that for my son, I would tell him, I don't know what your mission is. I don't know what your particular relationship with Christ is going to be. I don't know what God is calling you to do. That's a lonely place sometimes where you need to find that out on your own. And the only way that we're going to find that, because I can tell you why, because it's been lonely for me at times where I ask myself, Lord, you put me on this planet and you gave me a particular mission. What is this mission? Because I don't see it today. I don't see it right now. You're going to find yourself in that situation. And as you're moving forward, I'm not always going to be there to be able to guide you or to see it for you. And a lot of times, even if I were there, I don't know that I would see it for you, because it really comes down to what is your particular relationship with Christ? And that's what it's come down for me many times, where I got to ask myself, what do? I can turn to my own father for advice. I can turn to my friends for advice. I can talk to the guys. But at the end of the day, I need to make a decision. And I think, son, that's where we get closer to understanding what it means to be a man. What it means to be a man is to turn our eyes to heaven and realize I was not always here. I am on this planet because I have a God who loves me. And I think I need to understand that he has a mission for me. What it means to be a man is I'm going to turn my eyes to God as a male and ask him, what is it that you want from me on this planet? Guide me. I'm going to lose myself. I'm going to die to myself, as Christ said himself. Unless a grain of wheat fall to the ground and die, it remains a single grain. But if it dies, it yields a rich harvest. I think what it means to be a man is, hey, you need to die to yourself, to whatever desires you think you have that are worldly. Are they in line with getting closer to God or fulfilling your mission that God gives you, which is going to be hard at times? It's not going to be easy. Some days you're going to get up and you're going to say, I don't want to do this. I'm ready to give up. I'm ready to walk away from whatever it is that I am doing. I'm going to find myself in that position. And then the question is, what does your heart do? What does your heart do in that moment? Does it decide I give up? Or does it decide I don't see exactly where I'm headed? I'm blind right now, but I know that this is the right thing to do based on the commandments I've learned, based on the faith that my father gave me, based on the tradition of the church. I'm going to do what I know is right. And I'm going to let God guide me and participate in this decision. That's really, I think, what it comes down to being a man on an everyday basis. You know, you already are a man is the answer I would give to my son is if he were to ever ask me, what is it to be a man? I'd say you already are a man because that's how you were born. That's how ever since you were conceived, God had decided that. I saw it on the ultrasound. You know, biologically, you're a man. God made you a man. God made me a man. This is what you're already a man. It's not what does it mean to be a man or how does one become a man? You're already a man. The question is, what does God want me to do with that?